I signed my name on the wire transfer, careful not to betray how the salty bitterness of betrayal was drowning my latte. $30,000 evaporated from my commission, as if it had never existed. In the cafe window's reflection, I saw only the shadow of a woman being cynically and coldly robbed in broad daylight, cloaked in the guise of business necessity. 2 tables away, Walter Thompson, our CFO, was cackling on Zoom, his mouth agape like a trout gulping muddy water full of numbers. "Let's be honest," he proclaimed, "she'll close the deal anyway. She needs it way more than we do." He didn't see me. 3 days before the Douglas Sterling deal closed, a $19 million deal, my ticket out of this corporate hell. I was betrayed from the inside. Walter Thompson, without a word, unilaterally slashed my salary to balance the goddamn fourth quarter. So it was dryly stated on Slack. No warning, no discussion, just a digital gut punch at 7:48 a.m. I'd just returned from a 2-week roadshow, coddling Douglas Sterling's capricious COO with his maniacal obsession with regulatory compliance. I missed my favorite nephew's graduation, a wedding anniversary, a rare chance for vacation, and here it was, take that. Well, time to shed some weight. Apparently, I seemed too well fed to them. Walter Thompson had no idea, and neither did anyone else, that I'd been quietly weaving the web of my liberation for months. Not because I didn't believe in the work, I was the work, but because I stopped believing in them. The day before they decided to optimize me, a thick manila envelope landed in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a printed email. An internal correspondence, sent by mistake and recalled 5 minutes later. The subject screamed, "Let her close the deal, then we cut her." Walter Thompson's name was in bold, right next to Patricia from legal. The same Patricia who once confided, "You're the only woman here who makes them sweat. That's why they pretend to adore you." I didn't even bother guessing who sent the envelope. I knew for sure. There's only one person who calls me Dana when we're drinking martinis. And I smiled. That envelope didn't break me. It was the spark that lit the fuse. Because 6 months ago, after yet another meeting where Walter Thompson attributed my entire presentation to our strategic team, I registered Raven North Consulting LLC, my own domain, bank account, trademark in progress. And then I did something they definitely didn't expect. I started duplicating every contract. 1 copy for the company, 1 for me. Quietly, neatly, legally, like a safe. The Douglas Sterling deal. Oh, it was my moment. That contract, just the perfect blueprint. All I had to do was press the button. And that moment was approaching. Walter Thompson, my beloved CFO with the perpetually sour expression, wouldn't just choke on numbers this time. I wasn't just closing the deal. I was taking it with me, and no one was supposed to know. Not even the one who would try to stop me. The next morning, my keycard refused to work. It wasn't the first warning sign, but the first to screech piercingly as I swiped it, as if it knew I no longer belonged there. Tiffany, the receptionist, tried to feign innocence. But her gaze darted nervously to the security camera, as if she were holding a loaded gun. "Oh, that's so weird. Must be a glitch," she stammered, then whispered, "You didn't hear it from me, but the lawyers have been in Walter Thompson's office since 7 a.m. They're moving faster than I thought." Great. So they were seriously spooked. My desk upstairs looked normal, but somehow, emptied. The folder I'd carefully kept in a locked drawer had vanished. My USB drive disappeared with it. Someone had brazenly rifled through my files, leaving a Walter Thompson's Candy Dish Mint as a smug autograph. And then I noticed the calendar update. An invitation to the Douglas Sterling Strategy Sync, a meeting for executives only, where my name wasn't even mentioned. No invite for me. But in his endless spreadsheet hubris, Walter Thompson missed one detail. I still had access to the back end of our contract system. Unofficially, of course. But my old password still opened doors he'd been too lazy to lock. And I went in. And there it was. Fresh as the morning paper, the draft contract for Douglas Sterling, dated today. My name scrubbed from every line, as if I were a glitch in the matrix. Walter Thompson had replaced my LLC's routing information with the firm's faceless bank details. And the one to close the deal, him. My hand went numb, but not from shock. No, it was something else entirely, cold, crystal clear, all-consuming. A rage that felt like sandpaper against every one of my senses, sharpening them to a razor's edge. He was going to steal it. Steal it from me. Rob me of 7 months of negotiations. Steal the exit strategy I'd been nurturing, piecing together in sleepless 2 a.m. sessions. Steal my victory and turn it into just another line on his vaunted LinkedIn profile. But here's where it gets interesting. In their pathetic rush to get rid of me, Walter Thompson and Patricia overlooked one tiny detail I'd cunningly buried in the Douglas Sterling MSA. Section 7.4, an unassuming sole ownership of participation clause, legalese that made me the exclusive broker until Douglas Sterling and I personally gave official written consent. Douglas Sterling hadn't released me, and damn it, I hadn't signed anything. Which meant their freshly minted contract wasn't just a dirty trick, it was outright fraud, and fraud, you know, has very sharp teeth. With a triumphant click, I hit print. 20 pages slid out of the printer like deadly ammunition. Then I made a call. Not to Douglas Sterling. Not yet. I called her. Because if you want to burn a CFO to the ground, you don't go through the front door. You call his ex-wife. And gently remind her about the money he's still hiding in those Cayman Islands accounts, money he forgot to mention in court. And you're asking if she agreed to help me drag this into the light? Buckle up, she said yes. That evening, at the hotel where Walter Thompson was planning to celebrate his triumphant victory, we had a meeting. He'd booked a private room, of course. We just ordered wine. It arrived before she did. 2014 Brunello, his favorite. I specifically chose it. Let him taste his damn hubris in every tart sip. She showed up exactly 10 minutes late, and it wasn't an accident. Tall, impeccable, a woman whose presence took your breath away. A woman Walter Thompson had once tried to erase from the corporate Christmas cards. Still allergic to prenuptial agreements? I asked, rising to meet her. A slight smile touched her lips. Only the ones drafted by men who cheat on their own tax attorneys. We sat down. She pulled out a folder. Not one of those sleek, corporate ones I was used to. It was a plain plastic CVS envelope with a red zipper, and that somehow made the situation even more deliciously depraved. Cayman Islands accounts, I stated. She simply nodded in confirmation. 3 stolen ledgers. He ran it through a consulting firm he set up right after our split. The guy literally rebuilt himself to siphon off insider information, she said bitterly, handing me the files. And your price? I asked, although I already knew the answer. Not a muscle twitched in her eyes. I want him kicked off every board he's ever clawed his way onto. And I want to personally enjoy the show. We clinked glasses. The fuse was lit. Back at the office, my Slack was blazing brighter than a Christmas tree doused in gasoline. Walter Thompson had taken full control. Team, thrilled to announce I'm personally closing the Douglas Sterling contract. Another win for us. Please direct all client correspondence through executive channels. Standard protocol. Keep the internal workings under wraps. Let's focus on Q4. Translation, shut up. No leaks. And pretend the woman you just stabbed is still breathing. Suddenly, a message popped up on my screen from Patricia in legal. Just one sentence, but it hit me like a lightning bolt, you deserve better. In that moment, I realized, she'd caved. They'd broken her. My response was short and brutal, you have 24 hours to disappear, or you'll burn with him. Because I hadn't just printed out that damn contract. I'd taken care of every detail, timestamp, notarization, witness. It was airtight. Even earlier, Brittany, Douglas Sterling's assistant, had smelled something fishy. She'd seen the version Walter Thompson was trying to push through and messaged me anxiously, is this even legal? Something feels really off. I didn't mince words, sent her my version, the original. Just 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated. A photo. Walter Thompson on a conference call, smugly pointing to a slide that read post-closing transition plan. On the slide, a diagram of the Douglas Sterling team falling lockstep under Walter Thompson's control, and below, like a death sentence, sales team restructuring to optimize cost centers, phased elimination of underperforming personnel. He wasn't just stealing my deal, he was planning my termination right after. Let me digest that. This scumbag isn't just cutting my commission, erasing my name from the contract I created, but he's also going to kick me out like I'm an annoying obstacle in his path to success. As if I'm just trash to be cleared away after his triumph. And then I decided on the only thing left to do. Without complaints or tears, I headed straight to HR. There, I handed them the notarized contract, this blatant flag of fraud, and the statement from the Cayman Islands accounts, with a short note, check the last 3 bonus schemes of Walter Thompson. Now, put 2 and 2 together. Sweet Michelle, the HR director, the one who once knitted me a scarf for me, suddenly turned pale as if she'd seen a ghost. Is this true? She whispered, barely audible. I leaned in and whispered back, reality is enough to bury his career before his espresso gets cold. With those words, I turned and walked out. But I didn't go home. I headed straight to that Walter Thompson dinner and brought company. When I informed the maitre d' which table we would be joining, he seemed ready to immediately don his most expensive Moncler vest. Private room, he stammered. Mr. Walter Thompson ordered that we absolutely not be interrupted. I just smiled and handed him a crisp envelope. Inside was a formal cease and desist notice, drafted by my lawyer that morning. In it, Raven North Consulting was clearly identified as the legitimate broker of the Douglas Sterling deal, and any unauthorized presentation of the final term sheet was strictly prohibited. Tell Mr. Walter Thompson that he is one step away from breach of contract, I snapped. Either he enjoys his risotto in peace, or we'll have a nice chat about compliance afterward. He blinked as if snapping out of a trance, nodded, and vanished. Behind me, the former Mrs. Thompson leisurely sipped her wine, watching the scene unfold like the beginning of a thrilling courtroom drama, the finale of which was a guillotine. Time crawled by agonizingly slowly. 10 minutes, 15. Finally, the door creaked open. Walter Thompson entered the room. His nervous gait suggested that his insides had just been replaced with a stack of legal documents. He frantically searched for me, then her, but his smug grin immediately withered like a flower without water. Is this a joke? He hissed, struggling to speak. I held up the contract. Only if you consider criminal fraud something amusing. He looked at his ex-wife. Are you serious? She cut him off before he could finish. Enough, Walter Thompson. I've already sent everything to my lawyer. Remember her? Veronica Hayes, the one who ate you alive in mediation. His face turned crimson. Beads of sweat appeared under his collar. He subtly, but enough for me to feel it, grabbed my arm. You're ruining everything, he hissed through his teeth, his voice laced with undisguised threat. No, let me correct you, I said, putting steel into every word. I created this, and you tried to steal it. Well, now choke on it. I handed him the cease and desist order, watching his eyes dart frantically across the lines highlighted in section 7.4. You didn't just violate protocol, Walter Thompson, my voice rang with contempt. You tried to rewrite an existing contract, skipping the non-transfer clause, because you were too busy painting your own ego in bright colors. He flipped through the pages as if hoping to find a loophole by sheer force of will, but I knew that expression that was slowly spreading across his face, the moment of realization when he had been outplayed at his own game. I can fix this, he mumbled, his confidence evaporating like morning mist. Too late, I snapped. The deal is done. Douglas Sterling will sign my version tomorrow through Raven North. His eyes darted around in panic, as if desperately searching for a way out. You're bluffing, he spat out, but there was no trace of his former arrogance in his voice. I smirked. Call Douglas Sterling, I suggested, relishing his dismay. Ask him who he's flying to Phoenix with for the final signing. At that moment, his phone vibrated. He ignored it. The call repeated, then again. Finally, he gave in and looked at the screen. The color instantly drained from his face, leaving only an ashen mask of defeat. There was no need to ask. Of course, it was Douglas Sterling. The confirmation had already arrived. I hope the risotto is edible, I whispered, leaning close to him, because it's the last thing you'll pay for with company money. Turning, I headed towards the parking lot, but I hadn't taken more than a few steps when Patricia popped out of a black car. She came to me looking like someone who had decided to switch sides in the middle of a trial. We need to talk, she croaked, breathless. I have something, you need to see it. And that's when my story took an unexpected turn. Patricia looked as if hell itself had left her a voicemail. Her blouse was on backward, her lipstick smeared across her face as if she'd been passionately kissing a food processor. No briefcase, just a cracked phone in one hand and a trembling cup of coffee in the other. I'm not doing this for you, she blurted out, not letting me get a word in. I'm doing this because I've seen what happens to women who think loyalty is their armor here. She held out her phone to me. First a screenshot, then another, then a video. The first screenshot was an internal communication, for lawyers only. It read, black on white, if she resists, we'll bury her in arbitration. Tell Walter Thompson that the personnel documentation is already in progress. Then she showed me a PDF draft, their official complaint, accusing me of gross insubordination and breach of trust. And finally, the video. Muddy, filmed surreptitiously from another monitor. Walter Thompson was pacing his office. The phone was on speaker. The CEO's voice, Jonathan Hayes, came from the speaker, I don't care if the deal falls through. Destroy her reputation before she gets to the press, Jonathan Hayes barked at Walter Thompson. Have Patricia whisper about financial irregularities. Spread a rumor that she was forging supplier invoices or something. The blood ran cold in my veins. They weren't just getting rid of me. They were fabricating a case to shut me down for good. Patricia looked at me guiltily. I came across these files when I was downloading Douglas Sterling's documents. Walter Thompson told me to format them, she hesitated, he wanted me to erase the timestamps. I panicked and, screen recorded. 10 seconds stretched like an eternity. I stared at the screen, then back at her. Her eyes were swimming with fear, she was teetering on the edge, risking her own career. I need protection, she whispered, her voice trembling. If I give you all this, you have to guarantee that I won't get caught in the blast when it all goes to hell. Our eyes met. Mine filled with determination, hers with pleading. You'll provide me with all the files. Full access. And you'll never work for people like Walter Thompson again. You'll fight against them with me. Her lip trembled, but a faint glimmer of hope appeared in her eyes. Then check your email in 5 minutes. We shook hands. Her hand was cold and shaking. I collapsed into the seat of my car. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding like a bird in a cage, ready to break free. I'm no longer a victim. I'm a warrior. This isn't just about my commission or a broken contract anymore. It's a dirty, corporate conspiracy, a hostile takeover. And thanks to Patricia, I have irrefutable evidence in my hands. I grabbed my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. We're going to burn them to the ground, I said, my voice ringing with fury. Prepare a statement for the press. It needs to be published tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Then I called Douglas Sterling. Plans are changing, I said, my voice steely. Tomorrow, we're not just signing a deal. I paused, the words stuck in my throat. So, we're putting the CFO and the CEO on the chopping block too? There wasn't a trace of doubt in his voice, just icy calm. Send me all the documents, he said, and we'll meet before the signing. I suggest you get a front row seat. It'll be a sight to behold. Oh, yes, I definitely wanted to be there. After all, I had an ace up my sleeve, and I was going to play it spectacularly right under the noses of the entire board of directors. A chilling cold hung in the boardroom, penetrating to the bone. And it wasn't because of the slashed budget. Control freak Walter Thompson kept the temperature at 68 degrees, as if it were his personal fetish. The cold came from the oppressive silence. The kind of silence that hangs in the air when men in impeccable $3,000 suits anticipate a public execution, a professional death. It was 8:58 a.m. I sat, as if under siege, at the far end of the glass table, alone, but not unarmed. My leather notebook lay before me like a shield. The phone, face down, was discreetly recording. Opposite me, Jonathan Hayes, our polished CEO. He always smelled of expensive lemon trees, and his voice had the ingratiating sweetness with which con men deliver speeches of sympathy. To his right sat Walter Thompson, as if chewing on a debt. He was fiercely gnawing on the inside of his cheek. His tie was betraying him, askew, and his hands, as if tied by invisible threads, twitched incessantly toward the laptop that had not yet been allowed to open. "Ms. Bennett," Jonathan Hayes began, steepling his fingers, "before we proceed, allow me to express how regrettable it is that we must convene under these circumstances." "Likewise," I replied, opening my notebook. "I was hoping we could save all this drama for your company's holiday party." A stifled chuckle rippled through the room, but Jonathan Hayes remained unperturbed. "I've thoroughly reviewed the situation. Walter Thompson has explained everything. I trust you understand our position." "Indeed," I retorted. "Except for the part where your position entails criminal conspiracy, corporate theft, attempted defamation, and approximately half a dozen violations of SEC compliance laws." Jonathan Hayes blinked, clearly not anticipating such a direct assault. That's when I laid my cards on the table. Printed transcripts, screenshots of Patricia's correspondence. The independent forensic audit report confirming Mara's manipulation of the contract using Walter Thompson's credentials. Each page landed on the table with a dull thud, like the slow descent of a guillotine blade poised to sever someone's career. "And there's more," my voice rang in the room. "I have an audio recording of your conversation with Mr. Walter Thompson, where you discuss in detail the plan to fabricate charges and eject me from the project immediately after the deal closes. Copies are already with legal counsel, the press, and 3 members of the board of directors." A hairline crack appeared on Jonathan Hayes' face, like a flaw in a pristine mask. "This is outrageous. You're attempting to blackmail the corporation." I stood up, feeling a wave of liberation surge within me. "No," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "I'm simply leaving. And in doing so, I'm giving the deal with Douglas Sterling something you two never could, legitimacy." Turning toward the door, I saw Douglas Sterling enter the room as if on cue. 2 lawyers and a media representative loomed behind him. He tossed a thick packet of documents onto the table. Each page was clearly and boldly stamped in blue ink, Raven North Consulting. "This is the only contract we recognize," he declared, his voice firm and confident. "I've just notified all shareholders, officially registering the documents, that all future obligations will be accepted solely through Raven North." Walter Thompson's face turned ashen. Jonathan Hayes leaped to his feet, his mouth agape in a silent scream. You can't do this," he sputtered, choking on the words. "You're destroying our reputation." I calmly retrieved my phone. One click. And then, the room filled with Walter Thompson's sinister voice, "She'll break. They always break. If she makes a peep, torch her." A deathly silence descended. Then I pressed send. The audio recording, screenshots, and irrefutable legal evidence were dispatched to 3 major news outlets, a whistleblower forum, and directly to Patricia's LinkedIn. All hell broke loose in the boardroom. Jonathan Hayes, crimson with rage, lunged toward me, spewing legal threats like curses. Walter Thompson mumbled something incoherent about a monstrous misunderstanding, but no one was listening. All eyes were on Douglas Sterling, who shook my hand firmly and ushered me out of the room. Not as an employee, but as an equal partner. The news broke before I even reached the lobby. CFO and CEO of tech giant under fire for contract forgery and criminal conspiracy. And there it was, the first headline: whistleblower derails $19 million deal, exposing fraudulent scheme days before closing, firm left reeling. By the time I reached the valet, my inbox was groaning under the weight of non-disclosure agreements, enticing job offers, and 2 invitations to speak at a Women Who Don't Quit conference. But the real triumph was this: Walter Thompson's name vanished from the company website faster than a negative Yelp review. Jonathan Hayes was desperately trying to contain the damage, releasing a vague statement about rogue employees and ongoing investigations. But, as they say, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube, especially when it's been used as a weapon. Patricia was waiting for me at the hotel bar that evening. She looked 10 years younger, radiating a newfound freedom. "Can you believe they hired a crisis PR firm?" she said, sipping her whiskey sour with relish, as if it were a well-deserved reward. "They'll need resuscitation," I replied, "when the board of directors learns this is only the beginning." Because we weren't finished yet. The Cayman Islands account file was proving to be a veritable onion. Walter Thompson wasn't just siphoning off personal bonuses. He was deliberately inflating the cost of third-party vendor contracts and skimming a generous cut. And you know who ended up on the approval list as support? Jonathan Hayes. My lawyer, bless her heart, christened it a perfect storm of hubris and crooked protection. Meanwhile, Douglas Sterling and I were already fending off inquiries from 3 former Walter Thompson clients. One of them, an old pharmaceutical magnate, inquired whether Raven North offered ethics training. I almost choked on my peanuts from laughing. That weekend, I escaped to my sister's cabin on the lake. No laptops, no hustle, just me, the still water, and a bottle of champagne I'd been saving for this very day. I settled on the dock, popped the cork, and took a sip. No toasts, no fanfare, just a moment alone with myself. Remember the me who rehearsed polite rejections in the mirror? The one who cried in the closet because Walter Thompson had drilled into her that assertiveness was unseemly? She's gone. Now, here's the one who didn't just survive the system. She broke it and rebuilt it. And in 2 days, I would stand on a stage in front of 600 women at a tech summit in Washington, D.C., and tell them exactly how I did it. But only when the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. Because on Monday, with the first rays of sun, a federal subpoena would land on Jonathan Hayes' desk like a thunderclap, courtesy of Patricia. She had one last favor to call in, and she scheduled it for 9 a.m. The very time Walter Thompson held their famous Monday morning brainstorms. The ones I was mysteriously never invited to. At precisely 9 a.m. on Monday, Jonathan Hayes' world detonated with the precision of a Swiss watch strapped to a bomb. The subpoena was delivered by a federal agent in a windbreaker too new and severe to be accidental. The secretary attempted to intercept him, but the agent, like an icy wind, bypassed her and dropped the envelope directly onto Jonathan Hayes' desk, interrupting his crucial phone call. He was in the process of persuading a journalist to retract a damaging article. The call ended in disaster. As, incidentally, did his career. By 9:07 a.m., every partner on the executive board had copies of the federal findings. Patricia, bless her ruthless soul, had not only handed over the financial records but also provided a sworn affidavit detailing the internal directive to frame me for fabricated violations. Her signature was etched onto the resignation document like steel, impeccable and merciless. I will no longer be complicit in this institutional conspiracy of silence against competence. Walter Thompson barely had time to process the event before they stripped him of his severance package. Adrian's administrative privileges were revoked with such blinding speed that he couldn't even reach the server to wipe his precious Vision 2030 presentation, in which my deal with Douglas Sterling was flaunted as a model of success. They tried to erase me from history, to cover their tracks. But it was too late. The press was already gloating, blasting headlines worldwide: "Woman engineers perfect exit strategy, takes $19 million deal with her." And here's my favorite quote, from an editorial in Fortune: "Raven North isn't just a firm, it's a warning." I stood backstage, waiting to take the stage at the summit in Washington, D.C. The microphone clipped to my collar tickled slightly. I gazed out at the sea of faces, women in sharp suits, in comfortable jeans, in elegant hijabs, with bold dreadlocks, in traditional garments that reflected their pride and heritage. There were young interns, full of hope, and seasoned executives who had reached the top. All eyes were glued to the door, as if something more than just enlightenment lay beyond. I stepped out. The blinding lights hit me, the applause swelled, becoming a deafening roar. I started with the truth, with what burned inside me. I shouldn't be here, in this room. They planned to quietly destroy me, discredit me, replace me with someone more compliant. I paused, letting the words sink in. But I learned one simple thing very early on: they're not ready for a woman who documents her every move, trusts her intuition, and registers her own company before they even realize you've stopped smiling in those damn meetings. Laughter rippled through the room, along with nods of agreement. A hush fell, a special, intense silence, meaning they felt it, they understood every word. I saved a story they hadn't heard yet for the finale. The last ace up my sleeve, just for them. The Douglas Sterling deal. I didn't just close it. I licensed it on my terms, on my own terms, under my brand. Which means every time good old Walter Thompson uses a system based on my framework, they have to pay me royalties. The sum is small, but it's enough to remind them, quarter after quarter, that I'm still here. And every time they write that check, they see the same words printed in the bottom corner: Raven North Consulting, authorized, independent, irreplaceable. The scene dissolved into a raging ocean of hands, blinded by the relentless flashes of cameras. In that moment, the realization pierced me: they crave my disappearance, they want to consign me to oblivion. But I answered them by etching my name in indelible ink, as if burning it into the tablets of history. My autograph is a challenge, my signature is eternity.